You're not our family. Go home now.
On our way to a camping trip with my husband Joseph and his parents, we stopped at a rest area off the highway. As I got out of the RV, Joseph suddenly threw these shocking words at me. What? Excuse me? He seemed a completely different person from the considerate husband I knew. Seeing my surprised face, the three of them smirked and Joseph began to drive the RV away. This can't be happening. They wouldn't leave me here in the middle of nowhere. Panicking, I made a phone call only to receive a jaw-dropping response from my mother-in-law.
You really thought you could come along with us? What a nerve you've got.
Please don't say that and come back. I was looking forward to our trip.
Well, the highway is a one-way street. You can't just turn around. Besides, you're not a part of our family. You're just my daughter-in-law. Know your place. Bye now. We're going to have fun without you.
As I was staring dumbfounded at the abruptly ended call, the RV gradually became smaller and smaller until it disappeared from sight. The words that I wasn't a part of their family pierced my heart and ached intensely. This is terrible. They had me prepare everything, and then
a wave of bitterness and heartache washed over me.
Feeling helpless, I had no choice but to call a taxi and go back home. I'm Allison, 31 years old. I got married 2 years ago to my husband Joseph, who is the same age as me. He bought a house for us when I hesitated to live with his parents. Although it's within a stone's throw from my in-laws' house, it's better than living with them. However, they are free-spirited people who would suddenly ask me to do a huge amount of shopping or even have me clean their kitchen, dirty with dishes and greasy from cooking oil. I cannot deny that it feels like harassment sometimes, but Joseph always tells me, "I'm sorry for the trouble my parents are causing you." So I keep telling myself it's time to endure. His parents are both very concerned about appearances. They treat me surprisingly well in front of others, so I'm careful not to say anything negative about them, lest I become the villain. However, I had been hoping for the day when I could understand my in-laws better, but being left behind by my husband was too much of a shock for me to recover from for a while. The discussion about going camping occurred a week ago when we visited his parents on our off day. When I was asked to clean the storage room, I found a lantern. Do you guys go camping? Huh? What are you talking about? I found a lantern in the storage room. Oh, that. We bought it in case of a power outage. We had completely forgotten about it. I see. My father loves camping, and I used to go with him often, so I wondered if you guys also liked camping. When I talked about my father being a camping enthusiast and owning an RV, my husband's eyes lit up with excitement. That's amazing. I've always wanted to try it. Then it's decided. Let's go on our first family camping trip next week for 1 night and 2 days. Allison, please rent out an RV. My father cherishes his RV and takes care of it whenever he has free time. I'm not sure if he would lend it to us. Now it's your job to convince him. You better beg him to lend it to us, got it? When I hesitated due to the sudden request, my husband pleaded with me. It's our first time camping and we don't know what we need, so it would be safer to borrow your dad's RV. Besides, I want to please my parents with a fun camping trip. Please, Allison.
I had no choice but to agree when asked like that. I immediately went to my father's place and explained the situation. To my surprise, he gladly agreed.
Really? Is it okay?
Of course.
I thought you would refuse because you always polish and take care of it in your spare time.
If it's for you, Allison, I'm happy to lend it, and I'm touched by your desire to please Joseph's parents. So take this whole set of camping gear so you can enjoy your first camping trip. If you're a beginner, this and this would be good. My father selected easy-to-use equipment for beginners while explaining various things. I was more than happy to know how much my father cared about me, and my heart was warmed. It would be great if this camping trip could help me get closer with my in-laws. Alright, I'll work hard to prepare. I reserved a campground where we could use power comfortably, and there was a hot spring nearby. When I told my husband and in-laws, they were delighted. We're so lucky to have you, Allison. I'm so excited, I can't wait. I'm glad you're happy. On the day of the trip, I got into the RV, driven by my husband, full of excitement. We got on the highway and headed for the campground. My heart was pounding with anticipation. After driving for a while, my mother-in-law started being demanding again. Joseph, I'm thirsty. Can we stop at the interchange on our way?
Mom, I brought some drinks. You can pick any one from here. None of them really appeal to me. As my daughter-in-law, you should know my tastes. I'm sorry. As soon as I got out of the car at the interchange to buy my mother-in-law a Dr. Pepper as she had requested, my husband spoke shocking words to me in a cold tone, unlike his usual self. Allison, you're not a part of our family, so go home now. Excuse me, what? What suddenly got into you? He seemed like a complete different person. He wasn't the Joseph that I knew, the one who usually showed consideration for me. As I looked shocked and unable to understand what had just been said, the three of them laughed with a sneer and the RV started moving again, leaving me behind. They left me here? In the middle of nowhere? Is this some kind of joke? Panicked, I made a call only to receive a shocking response from my mother-in-law.
You thought you could really come with us? What a brazen woman. You are not a part of our family. Be aware of that. Bye. We'll enjoy a good family time without you.
I stood still, dumbfounded, staring at the abruptly disconnected call. How dare they? They had me prepare everything, and then they left me out? What was Joseph thinking? A surge of bitterness and sorrow overwhelmed me, but unable to deal with these emotions, I called a taxi and went home. The next day, my husband and in-laws came back from the camp and were excitedly talking about their fun experience. They didn't even bother to apologize for leaving me behind. As I started questioning them about the previous day's event, I received an astonishing response. We did it to discipline you as my wife. That's right, Allison, you never understand your place as our daughter-in-law. But there's no need to abandon me on the highway for that. We had to go this far because you wouldn't get it otherwise. We needed to properly discipline this failure of a wife before we start living together. Upon hearing the word living together from my mother-in-law, I was startled. I feared that discussions were happening behind my back without my knowledge. What do you mean by living together? I haven't heard anything about this. My parents' place is getting old and is at its limit. I've bought a house where we can invite Dad and Mom to live with us. From next year, we'll be living together, so I'm going to be stricter with you. Be prepared. I was stunned to hear this was my husband's true intention. Deciding such a major thing without consulting me at all, I couldn't believe it. My trembling anger was seemingly insignificant to the three of them. What's worse, after borrowing the RV, they didn't even bother to refill the gas or thank my father. Allison, why are you just standing around? Hurry up and return the RV to your dad. After cleaning the interior, wash the car, then return it to your father. We don't want to be seen as thoughtless. Looking at the car interior overlaid with trash, I was thoroughly disappointed in them. Not only ignoring me, but also disrespecting my father's kindness. Unforgivable. After cleaning and washing the RV and filling up the gas tank, I returned it. Upon arrival, my father greeted me with a full smile. How was it? Did you enjoy the trip? I wasn't considered as their family, so I didn't go. What? I told him about being abandoned at the highway interchange on the day of the trip and how my husband suddenly changed his attitude and decided on living with his parents without consulting me. Upon hearing this, my father's smiling face transformed into that of a furious demon. I lent it for you, Allison, and those people did such horrible things to discipline you? What a joke. We will not let this slide. I won't let them have their way, Allison. We're getting back at them. How? I have a secret plan. I also have a perfect place for camping. Listen carefully. You're amazing, Dad. It's sure to work. Keeping the wisdom my father bestowed upon me in my heart, I returned to my in-laws' house where my husband and his parents were still excited about yesterday's events. Now is the perfect chance to lure them. I smiled lightly, carefully keeping my emotions hidden, and spoke to the three of them in a gentle tone. There is an even more amazing place than where we went yesterday. The autumn leaves are incredibly beautiful right now. Why not do a full-scale camping trip? Instead of staying in an RV, why not pitch a tent and enjoy a barbecue while looking at the scenery? At night, you can see a sky full of stars. Really? Where? It's a secret spot that I don't want to tell anyone else. Can I come too to fulfill my role as your wife? That's good! It's gonna be fun! It's in a secluded area, so I'll drive. I'll act right as your wife and as my in-laws' daughter-in-law. So can I join you guys? As expected, my husband and his parents were overjoyed and agreed for me to accompany them. We decided to go camping again the following weekend. Just like always, they dumped all the preparation on me, and their pestering to teach me discipline only got worse each day. I carried my secret plan and meticulously arranged for my revenge. and the day of our trip arrived. I borrowed an RV from my father, drove to a remote campsite, and my husband and in-laws were thrilled. Wow, it's like a private site. They looked around restlessly, excited about the new environment. We'll go for a walk and enjoy the scenery. Allison, set up our tent. Understood. Enjoy your walk. Come on, let's go quickly. With those words, I saw off the joyous trio and began preparing for the camp. Then, about 30 minutes later, my husband called in a panic.
We're lost. I can't find your dad's RV.
I'm on my way home with it.
What? What do you mean?
Don't worry, I left the bare minimum for you to enjoy a real camp. This was the plan my father had devised. He suggested that they should experience some wild camping, where they would have to get everything themselves, like living on a deserted island, rather than a convenient camping site with electricity and a hotel resort nearby. You better set up your tent early and look for wood to start your fire. I know you guys have no lighter, so you'll have to start the fire yourself. I've left the pot so you can at least cook rice.
You left us behind?
You were the ones who said that I, as a wife, wasn't part of the family and shouldn't go camping with you guys, so I took you up to the campsite and tearfully went home. That's what you wanted to do, right? Having been hit with my logic, my husband was momentarily silenced. Enjoy camping with just your family. I was about to hang up when my husband, enraged, began yelling at me.
Don't be ridiculous. If you don't come back now, I'll get a divorce from you.
All right, let's get divorced.
You'll regret saying that.
Being abandoned on the highway, finding my father's cherished RV filled with trash, I've had enough of living with your parents who does nothing but disrespect me. And you're the ones who will regret it.
Go to hell, you stupid woman.
Utterly disgusted by my husband, who abruptly hung up, I started driving. I was actually nearby, but I lost all will to go pick them up. After a while, I received another call from my husband. His tone had completely changed, and I could hear his confusion and trembling voice over the phone.
I can't set up the tent no matter what. It's starting to rain and my parents are getting angry at me. It's getting cold too. What should I do? It's cold.
Regretting already? That was quick. Why don't you look up how to set up a tent on YouTube?
Forget the tent. My father pulled it too hard and ripped it apart. Allison, you've had your fun. Now fix your attitude and come pick us up.
I'm not coming. If you walk for about an hour, you'll reach a broad road. If you're not going to camp, then come down here with your stuff.
What? Just because I'm asking you nicely doesn't mean you can get all high and mighty.
Realizing this was my husband's true nature, my feelings for him had entirely cooled. All I could do was sigh.
Screw this. I'm going to dump all this useless stuff. Just wait till we get home.
Someone owns that place. It's a private property. If you dump anything here, you'll be sued for illegal dumping. You know, there's a sign there that clearly states no littering.
I don't care.
My husband, speaking with a strong tone, didn't seem to believe that I was serious about the divorce. I had to show him the reality. After our divorce, I'll be demanding compensation for the emotional distress from all the harassment you've done to me.
What? Wait, the divorce is a joke, right?
I'm serious. Our conversation from the time I was left behind on the highway is recorded on my dad's RV's dash cam, so you can't deny it. Not just that, I've also recorded the conversations when you were harassing me afterwards.
Let's calm down. We don't have any savings because we've been paying our mortgage. If you leave, I won't have anyone to cook and clean for us, which will be a problem.
You should think before you speak. I'm not your maid. If you don't agree to the divorce, I'll take it to court. It's going to become a big deal and everyone in the family will know. My husband, who's always conscious of others' judgment, got silent. I could hear his parents fussing around in the background, but it no longer mattered to me. After that, my husband attempted to say something with a preface of,
you know,
but then the call abruptly cut off. Soon after, I started receiving multiple calls from my in-laws, but I ignored them completely. After a while, the calls stopped ringing, so their phones must have died out of battery. My father's revenge plan was a huge success. On my way home, I picked up the divorce papers, filled them out, and left them on the table before returning to my sweet childhood home where my kind father lived. For some reason, my husband and in-laws took 3 hours to descend the mountain that would normally take only 1 hour. They should have used Google Maps instead of bothering me with calls. How foolish. My husband, who was desperate to have me stay with him, came to my parents' house, his anger apparent. Allison, get out here now. I'll teach you a lesson. If you have something to say, talk to my father. He's pretty upset, so it might not end well for you. My huge and intimidating father stood in front of my husband at the entrance. He went off at my husband and shut him down. Moreover, they left their tent and camping gear in the mountains and were sued for illegal dumping by the owner of the mountain. The person who filed the lawsuit was my father, who had inherited the land from my grandfather. There were a lot of trespassing and dumping incidents happening regularly on the land,
So security cameras were installed, and it was clear who was responsible for the mess. I wonder what kind of punishment will be handed down. After finalizing our divorce, I demanded and received $1 million each from my husband and in-laws for the emotional distress they caused me. Unable to pay off their mortgage, my husband's house was foreclosed, and he now lives with his parents in their leaky house, living modestly as a family of 3. No use crying over spilled milk, as they say. I returned to the company I used to work at before getting married, and I'm regaining the lifestyle that suits me. Next month, I plan to go camping with my parents, and I'm sure that I will have a blast then.
You need to pay that $3,000 bill your daughter racked up at my steakhouse. Those were the words of a man claiming to be the head chef of a fancy steakhouse, who showed up at our doorstep. According to him, my daughter had dashed without paying, but that was utterly impossible. I stood my ground against these men, who were bearing down on me with fierce expressions. After all, my daughter is... My name is Layla. I'm 30 years old. I live with my husband Daniel and our daughter Emma. I was once deceived by a former boyfriend who conned me out of $3,000, and I found out that I was pregnant with his child. I tried reaching out to him several times, but he never responded. He simply vanished. I was left alone, a divorcee with barely any savings left. Still, I gave birth to Emma. I was steeling myself for the tough times ahead when the news came that my ex-boyfriend was arrested. The man who came to my house for the inquiry was Daniel, my now husband. Daniel supported me as I was worn out from dealing with the ordeal with my ex-boyfriend. Despite our age difference, I was attracted to Daniel, who was strong and reliable. But I was a divorcee. I thought I would never be accepted, but Daniel did accept me. Now we have a good relationship with Daniel's parents and are leading a happy life. Then one day, I received a phone call from Daniel's parents. It's been a while and we were hoping you'd visit. We would love to see our grandchild. The voice of my mother-in-law, filled with affection, comes from the other side of the phone. My in-laws love their son's daughter, who's not related to them by blood, and I'm very happy about it. Absolutely, I'll let Daniel know as well. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law cheerfully says, "Thank you," and ends the call. It takes about 5 hours to my in-laws' house. For us living in the city, it's a place in the countryside where time seems to pass slowly. I immediately tell my husband about the message from his parents when he returned home in the evening. Well, I haven't taken any vacation yet this month. Let's use some time off and visit them. I'll check with my boss if we can get consecutive days off. With that, Daniel quickly calls his boss for approval. His boss kindly gives us approval, and we start looking forward to visiting his parents after a long time. However, on the day of the visit, Daniel suddenly had to work. You go ahead. I'll head there right after I finish work. I might not arrive until the next morning, though. With these words, Daniel sends us off and heads to his office. I let my in-laws know about the change in plans, then set off with my daughter. When we arrive at the in-laws' house, they treat us warmly, and we spend a comfortable time there. They seem eager for Daniel to arrive soon. The next day, early in the morning, my in-laws head to the barn as usual. I offered to help, but they insisted that I take it easy during my visit. So I waited for them to return home. Just then, the doorbell rings. It was too early for Daniel to arrive. Assuming it was a neighbor, I hurriedly go outside. "I'm coming!" As I open the door, I find a man in his 70s standing there. He glares at me with a fierce expression. Then suddenly, "I'm the owner of a local steakhouse. Your daughter dined and dashed at my place. Pay me $3,000. I was taken aback by his words and blinked in surprise. He then proceeds to explain the situation. Apparently, a young girl came to his store the previous night. Despite warning her that his store was too upscale for her to afford, she forced her way in and consumed $3,000 worth of food and drinks, after which she quickly left without paying. I found out that she's your daughter. If you're her parent, you should pay for her, he demands. I shake my head, trying to defend myself, but he seems too angry to listen and keeps insisting that I should pay him. Excuse me, may I ask your name? I inquire. I told you, it's Ethan. Now hurry up and pay, he retorts. I need to ask my parents-in-law whether they know you. Huh, shouldn't you be more worried about paying me first? Well, yes, but could you please wait a second? I ask him to wait and immediately contact my in-laws. I call them right away to confirm my suspicion. They respond quickly, and I'm told an astonishing fact. Trying not to show my surprise, I look at the man standing before me. I can't pay you, I say.
What are you saying? You don't care if my business suffers. If you don't pay, I'll call the police.
But wait, I think there's some misunderstanding.
There can't be a misunderstanding. I made sure to ask for her name when she dined.
Ethan brings out his cell phone to call the police. A policeman happens to pass by. The steakhouse owner called over the police officer and explained the situation. The officer furrowed his brows and glared at me, saying,
"May I have a word with you?"
I was confused, not knowing what to do with the officer's intimidating gaze.
"Your daughter is suspected of dining and dashing. If things stay as they are, we'll have to arrest her,"
he stated, demanding I hand over my daughter right away. No, there's been a misunderstanding. My daughter wouldn't do something like that. Even though I said this, the officer was unyielding. The steakhouse owner then said,
"If you insist,"
offering a concession.
"I'm not a monster. Since we're neighbors, if you can pay, I'll forgive her." "Ethan, are you sure about this?"
It doesn't bother me. She's a young girl. I knew she wouldn't be able to pay from the beginning, but she still wanted to eat my food. Isn't that an honor?" The steakhouse owner laughed heartily at this. The police officer's expression softened, and he presented me with a choice.
"Ethan here is offering you a solution. Why don't you pay the $3,000 for the food and the drink bill? He hasn't filed a complaint yet, so you won't be charged with a crime."
I refused nonetheless. As I opened my mouth to explain my reasons, the steakhouse owner's face flushed with anger and he yelled,
"You're spurning my generosity. Is this how you raised your daughter? Don't mess with me."
"Calm down, please. Why are you refusing to pay? If things stay as they are, your daughter will truly be arrested."
With a bewildered expression, the police officer asked me, "I can't just agree to this." As I was saying this, the steakhouse owner let out a laugh, saying,
Sorry, you mean you don't have $3,000 on you right now? I forgot.
As we age, we become forgetful. Well, our shop accepts credit card payments. If you entrust your credit card to me, I can handle the payment and return it later. Is that good?" Saying this, he instructed me to get my wallet. I refused, saying it was too risky to entrust my credit card to someone else, and offered to go along with him to handle the payment. However, the steakhouse owner threatened me, raising his fist and yelling,
"Don't you trust me? I'm in the credit business. Be careful with what you say or you'll regret it."
"Why can't I accompany you?" When I asked this, the steakhouse owner started yelling again.
"Because you're disrespecting me. Listen, I'm connected with some famous organizations around here. If you can't pay the money, I can still make you pay $3,000 using my methods. That's why I've even called a police officer to handle this legally."
As he ranted on, I stared at the steakhouse owner in disbelief. I wondered if it was okay for him to say such things in front of a police officer. Glancing over, I saw the officer pretending not to hear, looking away. "Excuse me, you're a police officer, right? Did you hear that? This is a threat, isn't it? Is this okay?" When I sought help, the police officer lowered his head with a troubled expression.
"No, I didn't hear anything. Anyway, if you pay the money, everything will be settled. Layla, please do as you're told."
What did this man just say? I could not believe a police officer would say that. Dumbfounded, I watched as the steakhouse owner began to threaten me once again with his harsh words. Any ordinary person would despair at the words of these two. They'd likely choose to pay the money and settle things, but I couldn't allow it. Aren't police officers supposed to protect the safety of citizens? Why are you siding with the bad guys? Despite my desperate appeal, the police officer only looked away without uttering a single word.
"The police are saying the same thing. What are you going to do? Make up your mind. Are you still not going to pay? Just because I'm old, don't take me lightly."
The steakhouse owner glared at me as he said this. It's not because I'm taking him lightly that I'm behaving this way. It's just unbelievable, so I'm stubbornly refusing. Even if I tried to explain, these two wouldn't let me get a word in. As I was thinking about what to do, a taxi pulled up in front of my house.
My husband got out. What happened? Who are these two people?
My husband, looking confused, asked,
"Is this your husband? You need to take responsibility."
Let me explain it to you, sir.
After listening to the police officer, my husband Daniel looked at me with a surprised face. When I frowned in confusion, Daniel seemed to understand everything and gave me a mischievous smile. I've always loved this playful side of him.
Sorry to have caused you trouble. My apologies. By the way, young man, which department do you belong to? Do you have a police badge?
Caught off guard by my husband's sudden outcry, the police officer stepped back a bit, but quickly took out his police badge from his pocket.
This is fake. Wait, what are you?
The police officer starts to sweat. Daniel laughs and says,
Haha, just kidding.
Hearing my husband's words, the police officer nervously forced a smile. Next, my husband asked him about his department and rank.
Do you really need that information right now?
Just curious, can't you tell me?
Oh, well, I'm a constable on duty at the police box.
Oh, I've never seen you before. Are you new to the area?
Thanks for your service. Yes, I'm still new.
So, would you mind if I contacted your station? Is it okay to use the name written in your badge earlier, Grayson Martin? As my husband asked this while taking out his phone, the police officer quickly grabbed his hand.
Before that, about the issue with Ethan, I would appreciate it if you could tell me whether you can pay or not.
The police officer urged my husband for an answer. The steakhouse owner, Ethan, seemed to have been completely overwhelmed by my husband's pace, and his fierceness from earlier had disappeared. You take responsibility. You're the husband, right?
Yes, but I don't have a job that earns that kind of money.
That doesn't mean you can dodge your bills. Unfazed by Ethan, Daniel just shrugs it off and says,
Oh, well. Oh, one last thing. Can you tell me your gun serial number? What? Why? It's not something I can easily tell you.
Huh?
That can't be. Knowing the number doesn't mean anything will happen. Or did you forget? This is a widely accepted verification method.
As my husband Daniel said this with a serious face, the police officer tilted his head and asked,
Really?
Watching my husband's response and the bewilderment of the two, my suspicion turned into conviction. Without a doubt, these two are in cahoots.
By the way, would you mind hearing my opinion on this dine and dash incident?
My husband said, giving the two a stern look. They looked puzzled by my husband's sudden strange suggestion.
In conclusion, you are a fake cop who's trying to scam us with that old man over there, aren't you?
The two were taken aback by my husband's words.
Do you have any evidence?
Yeah, show me the evidence that I'm lying. At their words, my husband said to me,
Layla, bring her over.
I ran to the back, and I brought our precious child in front of the two. To prevent any harm to her, my husband Daniel stepped in between us. My daughter's a 1-year-old, so she can't even walk, let alone dine and dash. When I said this, the two were shocked and opened their mouths wide. No, that's a lie. Is that child really Aria Taylor? Of course. After all, I'm only 30 years old. If this child wasn't my first, at what age would I have had my first child? When I said that, Ethan, the steakhouse owner, clearly became unsettled and took a step back. Then he glanced at the police officer, who nodded in response to his gaze.
Oh, it seems that the dine and dasher was someone else. My apologies.
The police officer and the steakhouse owner were about to run off. Then Daniel stepped in, encircling them so they couldn't escape. I immediately retreated to the entrance and watched the two through a gap in the door.
Could you perhaps let me through?
No, we won't let you escape. You might be scammers. We won't allow it.
Don't mess with me. I'm a police officer. If you don't let me through, I'll arrest you for obstructing an investigation.
The officer tried to forcefully shove Daniel aside, but Daniel nimbly circled back in front of him.
My apologies for not introducing myself earlier. I'm Daniel Taylor, Chief Inspector of the New York Investigation Division.
With that, Daniel pulled out his police badge from his pocket. It was a genuine police badge shining there, not some cheap imitation, like the one the young officer had shown earlier.
Well, what? Liar, I'm the real deal.
Whether you're real or not doesn't matter.
You've committed fraud, haven't you?
It's a disgrace for a police officer. Do you understand what the investigation division does?
Well, what are you talking about? You don't know what the investigation division is? The division is responsible for investigating intelligent crimes, such as fraud, embezzlement, counterfeit money, election violations, financial crimes, defamation, and high-tech crimes. In other words, deals with criminals like you.
Saying this, Daniel quickly took out handcuffs and began to arrest the two. The two couldn't resist the professional, and they were quickly apprehended.
Daniel then immediately took out his phone and said, I've apprehended fraudsters on the spot. This is outside my jurisdiction. Please send officers from the designated area over here immediately. Upon hearing Daniel's words, the faces of the two scammers quickly turned pale. But please forgive us.
We were just desperate for money. It's our first offense. Please let us go.
Just then, my in-laws arrived with the police.
Are you okay? Sorry we're late. This guy couldn't explain things properly.
Whatever. Wait, you're here too. What a relief.
My in-laws said that, pulling me and our daughter in to hug us. I had been on edge this whole time, but I could finally relax and breathe a sigh of relief. The two were loaded into a police car. At first, I thought that old man was the only fraudster. When I called my in-laws, I asked if a man named Ethan lived in the neighborhood. My in-laws didn't know the name. They've lived here a long time and know everyone that lives around here. If they didn't know him, that meant this Ethan did not exist here. More importantly, my daughter is only 1. She couldn't possibly have done and dashed. Although I hadn't directly asked my in-laws to call the police, they had understood my situation and told me they would bring the police. When I thought I had to keep this man here until then, I was quite tense, but I made up my mind to protect my daughter. I sensed something fishy about the police officer who showed up. After talking to him for a while, I couldn't stand him or forgive him. Although I didn't have any proof at first, I became sure he was a fake officer due to Daniel's questioning. It was fortunate that Daniel was there this time, but thinking about what could have happened if he wasn't there made me break out in a cold sweat. I'm really glad it was resolved safely. After that, thanks to Daniel and the officer in charge of the area, the case involving the 2 fraudsters were closed. When they were investigated, it seemed a lot of charges were lined up one after another. Daniel sighed and told me the story. He looked somewhat sad and angry at the same time. Also, it seems that these 2 fraudsters were not part of an organization. Their faces became known to the entire country thanks to the news. As for me, thanks to the consideration of Daniel and my in-laws, I was able to stay at their home one more day. Also, the news that Daniel had arrested the fraudsters quickly spread, and all the neighbors brought over a bunch of fancy food, and the gathering quickly turned into a party. Our daughter also seemed to be having fun and didn't cry at all that night. I was savoring my happiness as I looked over at my daughter's face.